Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Killteam YouTube channel. Today, we are still talking about factions. LVO is coming up this week, and today we are going to be talking about my personal favorite faction to take this time around, Novitiates. Jesh, you've played against Novitiates a lot, right?
Yes, personally, as someone who's played against Novitiates, probably like 20 or 30 games or so, I'm not a fan of playing against them.
I like them quite a bit. We're going to get a lot into why. The way that this series is going to work is we are going to have someone who's going to LVO or some tournament in the future talk about the faction they're taking, its history in the meta, its good and bad matchups, and ultimately why they chose it over others. So today, I'm going to be leading Jesh through a conversation about Novitiates, and he's going to kind of weigh in from an outside perspective as someone who I don't think you've ever actually played them, right?
Never played the actual team.
But you've played against them a lot.
Played against them a fair share.
So let's get into it. First, we're going to talk about the history of the meta. I think they've had like one nerf in their entire history, and it was like a year ago.
Yeah, they haven't really been touched much.
But the big thing, like they haven't gotten too many buffs. The big thing for me was the critical ops extra command point. That was something that I underestimated, but having that extra command point to start with 4 at the start of the game makes a lot of their tools really useful, especially one that I'll get into a bit later. But they've got some really good strats they want to be spending it on. Yeah. I think, like the nerfs were like to the auto chastizer to make it 2 equipment points.
Something like that. They're too minuscule even for me to even remember.
The other one was like you can't faith point a reroll, which was big. That was a big part of my strategy 2 LVOs ago. But the team functioned just fine without that.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be good. Also, shooting hordes. They're going to be big this time around. And, I mean, I think we've seen that they like shooting hordes.
Yeah, they do like the shooting hordes.
They honestly like a lot of teams. They like shooting hordes, depending on the matchup. They love elites. They love Eldar. We're going to see a decent amount of those at LVO.
Only Eldar they don't like is really Void Dancers.
Yeah, and even then they've got a chance in them.
Right, it's not a bad matchup.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about the matchup specifically in the future, but the big thing to know right now is like now is their time. They have lost a lot of their predators, and their prey is big right now. Like Kazarkin, I think they've got a really good match into Kazarkin.
Yeah.
I keep jumping the gun on this. Before we get into that, let's just break down the team a little bit with strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Defenders of the Faith was the ploy that I was talking about.
Oh, Defenders of the Faith.
You have been
my
hit by
kryptonite.
That. You've been hit by that several times.
Yes, Defenders of the Faith, I think, is easily one of, if not the strongest strat boy they have.
It's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
The history of it used to not come up very often, but it was still very good. Now it's like you can hit it every game. And for people who don't know, Defenders of the Faith is 2 command points in the strategic phase. For at the start of the turning point, 1 girl per objective with an engage order can make a shoot or a fight action. There are 2 reasons why this is solid. 1, early damage, you can double up on it, especially if you have initiative. And 2, on Into the Dark, you can go on guard.
Yes, and especially with those flamers, Lethal 5, super damage. The flamers are nasty on Defenders of the Faith.
Yeah. One more trick I'll point out that actually Chris Baki told me when I was up at Merry Mayhem is that the flamer, when you use Burning Wrath to gain the extra damage, that lasts till the end of the turn.
That's a fair point.
So if you are willing to spend 3 command points, let's suppose you have initiative. Pay 2 CP, pay a command point for one of your flamers to burn someone alive. They'll get the kill generally. Then you take initiative, you move and dash somewhere else, and get another 3-4 damage flamer on somewhere. This strat I have genuinely had, like, wipe half an opponent's team in a turn and swing the entire game.
If not played against correctly, if you get the initiative and pop Defender of the Faith, and you use, like, a flamer, then you could get easily 4 or 5 kills.
Yeah.
Before they even get activated.
Not to mention, like, just auto pistols being shooting when
even
you don't expect them.
Right, even just the auto pistols. So, and the long-distance plasma hitting on Zeus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that plasma pistol is really good. It's one of the best ones.
Yeah.
Josh, you've been hit by the Penitent Rush, right?
I've been hit by the Penitent Rush.
How does it feel?
Never feels great.
It feels really good as a Novitiate player. Just locking down half the board with a crack grenade.
Yeah.
For context, if you whip the Penitent, she gains 2 inches of movement and 3 APL. So she can run 11 inches and then throw a crack grenade or a frag grenade. And with faith points, that becomes very consistent. This is one of the key reasons why Novitiates are so good in the Eldar teams. Because an 8-wound model that decides to move a little too far forward just gets obliterated turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a Pathfinder Alpha Strike necessarily.
No.
But if you save it, it can be very devastating.
It's also especially good if, for example, you whip it, it has 3 APL, and I get close enough to where you can charge. You charge, fight, then crack. And I'm
huge.
done.
That is huge. We'll talk about their weak matchups in a minute, but like Felgor, I believe, is one of them. But with this, if they give you too much, there's a potential for you to charge in, fight someone, frenzy them, fight again, fix the crit to get the kill, then throw the crack grenade at another guy.
Because the second fight's free, isn't it?
It is.
So yeah, that's definitely a potential. An inexperienced Felgor player might have a hard time.
They might. So the Penitent Rush is something very strong with them. It's one of the main reasons I'm taking them, because it gives you a lot of pressure from a team that doesn't look like it would provide a lot of pressure at the front. But ultimately you realize this team is really fast. Speaking of fast, Flamers. This is the other part of your damage equation, and they are very, very good at what they do.
Yes, because they almost never need 3 APL because they both get docket dashes, essentially. They get 2 dash and then consecutively flame after a move, which just really limits where you can move.
Or if the enemy's close by, you can dash onto an objective, flame, and then loot, or you can dash, flame, run away.
They are definitely strong.
They are incredibly strong.
With the auto chastisers, they're almost always guaranteeing at least like 1 or 2 crits plus all hits.
Yep. If you don't see me taking 2 auto chastisers on the Flamers, then I'm doing something weird. Because rerolling 1s on these Flamers makes them incredibly consistent. And as I said, they're strong on Into the Dark, not just for the reason you'd think of like 5-up lethal Flamers, but also like their Burning Advance ability says you dash, then make a shoot action, which means they can move, dash, and guard.
And guard is technically a shoot action.
Yes. So that means like even if you're on Into the Dark, which I thought for a long time was actually a bad matchup for them, being able to move and dash up to a door and then just hold, and if anyone opens it, you can just burn the guy on the other side, makes them incredibly potent.
Yeah.
But, then someone might say, hey, you're 7 wounds with a 4-up save. Like, that's really mediocre. I can just shoot you. No, you can't.
Nope. Well, you can, but it's not easy.
It's not going to work, generally. If you don't have a lot of armor penetration, Dakota at Merry Mayhem figured this out, they're actually really durable. Even with 4-up saves, like, it's a lot of times of like, I'm going to shoot my bolt gun at you. I'm going to shoot a grenade launcher at you. And I am 1 save short of living, and I'm just like, pay 2 faith points, make that happen. Easiest trades in the world. The medic is nearby. And with how much effort it usually takes to kill 1 girl, unless you are firing a plasma gun, and it hits, like it still has to hit.
Yeah.
By the time you kill her with the medic, the next terms come around, and she's ready to be medicked again.
Here's the thing I can say. They are durable when it comes to shooting, but if they get charged by the right melee model, they're not in a good spot.
That is a very big point. And if you have high AP with good accuracy as well.
That too.
AP2 will generally evaporate one of these girls.
Yes.
There's no invulnerable save. There's nothing like that. So that is something to be very well aware of while you're playing with or against Novitiates. And that kind of goes into one of our points on their weaknesses. It's hard to avoid that kind of damage. And so, like, if you were going to play Novitiates, and I told you, like, we're going to play a super hyper-competitive game, and you got to pick whatever faction you were going to play. We weren't trying to make it fair. You were trying to make it as difficult for me to win as possible. Which faction would you take?
With general experience and knowledge of their bad matchups, I'd probably take Commandos.
Commandos?
Yeah.
And Which particular aspects? I think we were just touching on it, but like, which aspects do you think would be good into them?
There's a couple main aspects. Is their choppas can be pretty bad for them. It's just enough damage, and I can survive their shooting with. They have 10 wounds. They're pretty durable. They have the Justice Scratch, and they just have the enough bodies. They have the bodies to deal with them.
Yep. That's another thing. If you can't trade well, then you're going to struggle. Which might raise the question, like, how can they be good into shooting hordes if they're outnumbered? And that's just generally because I think they kill shooting hordes way better than shooting hordes can kill them.
Yes, yeah, because the shooting, like you mentioned, you have a pretty easy way of denying shooting unless it has good armor piercing. And if you're doing like 2-for-1 trades with the Penitent and they're not even able to kill one model with shooting until you shoot at it 3 times, then it's not worth it.
Exactly. There are some things to be aware of, though, with this team. There are some weaknesses that you need to be aware of. One of the core ones is if you waste your faith points, you are just kind of SOL.
Yes, faith points you need to be very good at managing the faith points, which is something I've noticed. You're generally good at managing the faith points, and that's what makes it hard. If you don't manage them right, then you're not durable enough. You can't survive the shooting like we normally can.
I've seen a lot of games where people, myself included at times, will be down to like 0 faith points by turn 2. That's when the team really starts to sweat. That's when they really start to struggle. And that generally happens because you either overexposed, you frivolously spent your points on attacks that didn't matter as much, or you just gave away too many shots, and you had to keep blinding auraing people.
Yeah.
Like, blinding aura, the ability to not be shot outside of 2 inches while you're concealed, is huge. But since it doesn't last until the end of the turn, if you do that too early and you just think your person's going to be invincible, you'll burn through your points very quickly.
Yeah, so even though you have the option to stay safe from shooting, you can't just leave them out being like, oh, I will survive the shooting attack, because you'll lose the faith points.
Yep. And that goes to the next point. As soon as you are out of faith points, you'll realize just how mediocre your stats kind of are. Your auto pistols, they hit on 3s, but 2-3 damage. If you're not converting all 4 hits, it's probably not going to do anything. Your Penitent hits on 4s. Maybe she gets rerolls, but we've seen that not go well.
Yeah, 4-on-4s, rerolls, it can go bad, for sure.
Without faith, the team does not have a lot of balanced. They have it on their Militant, which is kind of funny, but they don't have a lot of balanced. They don't have a lot of ceaseless, except for the auto chest. They've actually got rerolls. They got a
few. They got a few.
But like, when you don't have the resources to do that, when you're taking your leader, you're out of faith points, and you get that overcharge, and you blast yourself into a 1, it hurts a lot more.
Yeah.
Because you're low on models. Each of those shots needs to count. It's why the team is so good, because each of those shots counts. But the second that they start whiffing because they're out of faith points, they start to have a real problem.
And generally, I like to point this out, once you're running out of those faith points, it's usually when you're starting to get injured, which just makes it all the worse even when you do have rerolls.
Exactly. So if you're playing Novitiates at LVO, I know that there's going to be a few people joining me. I would say try to keep about 5 faith points at the start of each turn. So, go down to 2, go back up to 5. That's a pretty comfortable amount. You'll pop back up to 8 because of your Cup Lady. Keep the Cup Lady alive as well, because she is absolutely essential.
Yeah, she would just typically camp on a point, do what she needs to, get those faith points.
Yeah, she's key. But if you're able to do that, and you have that comfortable amount of faith points, and you can be comfortable only spending like 3, 4, 5 faith points in a turn, unless it's a really big turn, then I think you'll have your resource management on lock. But we've been dancing around it. We've been kind of talking about it. We've just gone over their strengths and weaknesses, but let's look at some of their strong and good matchups. And I'm actually curious, because you didn't make this with me.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious if you disagree with me on any of this. So in good matchups, we've got like elites, obviously.
I agree with that.
Eldar, shooting hordes, and a special shout out to Gellerpox, because I think that is actually one of the melee hordes we can handle.
So with Gellerpox, I would agree with that you can handle them, but I wouldn't say it's a good matchup.
Okay, elaborate.
So You can't. There's only 4 bodies that are really a threat to you because the other one's melee. It's not enough, but they're good at getting the points even without them. And the 4 bodies, if you're not killing them effectively, it can still go bad. They get their double kills like each time.
They do get double kills, but the way I look at the matchup is like you've got your flamer. You wait until the end of the turn. You have very little shooting. So at my last activation, I run out of flamer. I burn down like 1 or 2 of the little guys.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm on an objective, I then pay 2 command points because this team gives up defenders of the faith like way more than a lot of other teams tend to do because we can move up so aggressively on them.
Yeah.
Hit them again, and then heaven forbid I have initiative because then I run around and I hit someone else.
That's true. The flamers can be strong. It's harder to do that on Into the Dark. You can go on guard, sure, but Nightmare Hulks don't really care if you're on guard. You lose an attack dice, you're injured. So I think primarily it is a little bit board dependent. Like I think I mentioned before, Gallopbox are a little bit board dependent, but I think that it's not per se a good matchup unless it's the right board.
That's fair. I'm definitely curious about it. Gallopbox is definitely not a walkover for this team, but in my games I've had pretty decent success into them.
Yeah.
I know that we've also had some pretty wonky boards though. So
yeah, that's fair.
Lots of open hallways and old Into the Dark matchups, but I think that they are the melee horde I would rather see.
Yeah, I can agree with that. They would be the melee horde you'd want to deal with rather than like Colt or Felgor. I still don't really think it's a good matchup. I think it's still generally even and potentially could still be in Gallopbox's favor if stuff goes wrong.
Yeah. And then the bad matchups, I think some of these are obvious.
Yeah.
Commandos, I think everyone has a bad matchup in their Commandos.
Except elites, which are not showing up as often.
That's true. Felgor. Felgor are really difficult to deal with. I think that maybe we have the ability to make our crits and to like kill frenzied models. The problem is getting them there.
Yeah, it's getting. They have 10 wounds. Their melee is too much for you. The Penitent's like the only one who can really deal with it, and that's if.
Yeah. We've got like another girl who's got like a 5/5 damage mace, but
yeah, it's not enough.
Yeah, and the plasma pistol again does well, but at what point are they giving you shots and not running over your front line?
Yeah.
I think you have to lead with weaker models maybe, and then back it up with the flame. You can't lead with the flamers in this matchup. Definitely not.
If you face an inexperienced Felgor player, it still wouldn't be easy, but it's definitely winnable.
Yeah. And then we got Void Dancers, and I tentatively put Wormblade there because I've played 1 game into them, and I think I could beat them in the future, but I didn't beat them then. And stuff like a Locust, if you're not ready for that, is very strong.
Yeah.
That charge, it can shut down an entire alleyway for a flamer.
Yeah.
They do have a lot of models, and those shotguns, though we've been talking about, non-AP shooting being pretty weak in the Novitiates, when you have enough shotguns, taking 3 damage here and 3 damage there really starts to add up.
Yeah, it does enough.
And even if you're faith pointing back your health, just the fact that you have to be spending your faith points
on the healing,
to get
it's
back
too much.
online. And then I think that's especially bad if you play on loot.
Oh yeah.
I think Novitiates overall don't like loot. I think they love capture, but Wormblade and teams like that love loot, and I think it gives them a huge edge in that kind of
and I think I think Wormblade have the edge for the reasons you gave, and I think Void Dancers have the edge just because of how good they are for 2-for-1 straights.
Yeah, not to mention 7 damage kisses.
Exactly. It's 1 hit, and then there's 2 models that just pretty much guaranteed kill whoever they shoot.
Yep. Now you can spread out against Void Dancers. You have the ability to do that, but it is very hard. You have to play very intelligently,
especially since they're so fast.
Really, I think the way you play against Void Dancers is you have to go cagey at first, and then you got to set up for Defenders of the Faith. I'm thinking of a particular matchup I played on TTS in a practice game where we were getting pushed, back. We were all the way in our deployment zone.
Mm-hmm.
We out-activated him by 2, I run out a flamer and I burn some guy and I get the kill. Run out another flamer, and I think we injure someone. Then next turn comes, I rolled initiative. I hit Defenders of the Faith, killed a second guy and the injured one, then took that flamer, ran her up, and got a torrent on 2 more Void Dancers and got them to die as well.
Yeah, that's enough.
That would be enough, but like I needed 3 command points for that, 4 if you count the turn before, and I needed to have them line up in a certain way, and I needed to get initiative.
Yeah, a lot of things need to go your way.
A lot of things needed to go right. I think that Void Dancers I'd rather fight than Felgor, but
well, yeah, for sure.
But in general, melee hordes are rough. I didn't put cultists on here because I don't think we're going to see a lot of cultists.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, they can't just charge and tickle you before they mutate now, which is something they could do for Novitiates.
That's true.
Because you're 7 wounds, so it's not a big threat.
And so, I think we've got a match into cultists, but I thought they had a match into cultists before.
Yeah,
it's just a better one now.
Yeah, I don't think it's easy anymore. I still don't think it's easy.
Oh no.
Yeah, no.
I think any melee horde's going to give this team some trouble. Though I think that they I'm talking about bad matchups here. When we start talking about why I took this team over others, I don't think any of these matches are unwinnable.
I think that I don't think any are unwinnable. I think the closest you could get to unwinnable would be like Commandos on open or just Felgor.
Yeah.
That's the closest, but it's still winnable. It's totally winnable.
I will say one unwinnable match that I've had was against Jimmy Kelly on open board with diagonal deployment on the approach objective layout.
The approach objective layout sucks.
Screw approach. The one where all of the objectives are in the middle.
So you can't reach it unless you both move and dash.
It's awful. I hate that one. Please, GW, take that out of the game. But like we actually were doing good damage to Commandos.
It's just not enough.
Yeah. I mean, we had them down to like 2 models, but it didn't matter because
they scored
like 15 points on turn 1.
The thing with Commandos, if you're doing the damage, they're getting the points, and if you're getting the points, they're going to kill you and then take the points back.
Exactly. So, and I think that's a universal problem with Commandos, and I think that's why Commandos are still going to be present and very, very strong. They score really easily, even if you can handle the damage they deal. Novitiates, I know, especially at least on loot and stuff, have trouble reconciling that damage or that point score. Yeah,
loot is hard. Secure's hard because of the action you have to spend to do it. You can't both be injuring them plus having to spend actions to secure points, especially if he's having to take them back from you. Then you have to do it again. Capture's their best bet, but it's not fun. It's hard. But before we wrap this up, I think we got one more thing to talk about, and that is why I'm taking Novitiates over stuff like Vet Guard, Hand of the Archon, and Ecclesiarchy. That was for your dad. And it was a tough choice. I think Vet Guard was the biggest contender. Ecclesiarchy's a meme, but I also think it's kind of... I'm going to take it to an RTT and see how they do. 3 Meltaguns is pretty solid. That's obvious. Okay.
This is not an Ecclesiarchy video. I just think that,
foreshadowing.
If any brave souls want to try it out with me, I've got to buy some Sisters models, but I think I'm going to do that. Hand of the Archon was a bit more of a real choice. I still like Hand of the Archon. I think they got good damage. I think if they're played intelligently, they've got really solid alpha strikes and such.
I think both them and Novitiates have like really similar bad matchups. I just think it's worse for Hand of the Archon.
Yes. I think we're both thinking about Commandos.
Yeah, Commandos.
The Commando match for Hand of the Archon's unwinnable. I'm just going to say that straight out. Like, if you run into Commandos, like, pack your bags. Good luck. I have won that match one time, but that was because Leander had not played against Hand of the Archon before. And
they can surprise you.
I think he got a bit intimidated by the pain grenade. But
yeah, if you let that pain grenade intimidate you too much, you could hold back and you could die, and it doesn't work out.
But for the most part, I think Commandos just stomp them.
Yeah.
In our last video, I made a case for their match against Felgor. Like,
you made a case. It
I
wasn't a good
tried.
one.
Like, I'd have to try it. I think they're actually good in the Cole. If we're talking about melee hordes.
If it's melee hordes, I think Cole's one of the best ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can only really have two real threats at once. And if you focus them down or just avoid them altogether, then yeah, you're good.
But then they got stuff like Kazarkin they got to worry about.
Yeah. Which is a pretty common.
A demo mine on an objective just says, okay, I guess I'm not going that way.
Right. They just lock down one of your objectives.
Yeah, being outnumbered by that team and having that team be able to one-shot you. Again, as much as I want to make the case for them, when it came down to me choosing my team, they were not going to be reliable.
Yeah, Novitiates are better at surviving the shooting against teams like Castrican and Pathfinders than Hit the Archon.
They will be, for sure. And they do equivalent damage in a lot of cases.
Right, yeah.
So that leaves Vetguard. Vetguard I've been playing a lot of.
And they're a very solid team.
Yeah, we've played against each other a lot.
Yeah.
We played against each other at the finals of West Coast Championship.
Yep.
I took Vetguard. And then at the finals of Merry Mayhem.
Yeah.
That was not Vetguard.
That was not Vetguard, though.
But I played Vetguard into your Legionary at SoCal.
Yeah, it was Vetguard into Legionary, open on, I believe it was Secure.
Was it Secure both times?
I believe it was either Secure or Loot. I know it was one of the ones we had to do action.
Yeah.
And Vetguard against an elite team, especially on one where you have to do an action to control a point, is not fun.
Yeah. The problem is, the hour of elite teams is waning right now.
And it kind of was already waning before the meta.
So, like, what are we going to be running into now? Legionary a lot more. Legionary actually can sometimes beat Vetguard. I think that they are going to play into that more. So if the ones we're going to see are probably going to take Tzeentch to deal with Kazarkin. And I think Tzeentch is worse for Vetguard.
You think Tzeentch is worse for Vetguard?
Than Nurgle?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because like the big damage weapons are like the plasma gun, the melta-gun, even the grenade launcher, and then if you look at the sniper, that's already 3 damage. We don't have much other damage that gets reduced by that much.
I guess that's fair. Yeah, I can see an argument for Tzeentch being worse for Vetguard.
But it's also the utility. Like a Tzeentch model being able to get 4 APL.
Tzeentch has the strongest tactical play in Legionary, so.
They do. And I think, like, you have a Balefire Acolyte with shoot twice, moves, dashes, fireballs a group, and then bolt pistol someone else.
With a reroll? Yeah,
yep.
That's not fun.
It's, so I think that...
On Into the Dark, Legionary do definitely have a not bad matchup into Vetguard.
Yeah. But that's not why I didn't take them. I think ultimately it was consistency. When I'm looking at going to a 9-round event, ultimately what I want is a team that's going to carry me all 9 rounds.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, Vetguard hits on 4s.
Yeah.
They've got ways to mitigate that. They've got reroll 1s, and actually that's kind of all they've got.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like, when you play 9 games, there is a decent chance one of those games, your melta-gun will miss a key target, or your plasma gun will whiff all game.
Yeah.
And that is something you just can't be counting on.
And Novitiates, they have their dice fixing.
They have dice fixing. They get a lot of it. They have it consistently throughout the game, so they have a little bit of it every turn.
Yeah.
So even though Novitiates have fewer models, I just saw that they were going to be more consistent and do more damage and ultimately beat teams that Vetguard should beat, but will sometimes lose to because they get diced.
The thing is Vetguard, I wouldn't say have any objectively bad matchups, whereas Novitiates do.
Star Striders. Vetguard hates Star Striders.
It's still winnable, though, whereas Novitiates could come across a match where it's less winnable.
Are you thinking like Felgor?
Felgor, Commandos.
Yeah, I mean, Vetguard don't do that much better into Commandos.
I think it still is.
I've tried.
Yeah, okay. And another thing is, you mentioned, it is definitely more consistent with fate points, but you still have to keep track of managing them.
You do.
So there's only so much consistency until you have to really stop fixing them.
Yeah, but at the same time, while Vetguard, you're relying on luck to roll enough 4s to win the game, Novitiates, managing your faith points is a skill.
That's true.
It's another layer of the competition. It's another way to kind of flex your muscles. I think them and I think honestly, them more than Kazrakin, you get to kind of flex the resource management of the game
Yeah.
because they trickle in over time, and you have to make sure that you have enough to do everything you want to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I'm looking at them. I think that Novitiates have a very strong case for top 8, not just in my hands, but in any player's hands, especially if they have good practice into them and they know how to manage those faith points. I think that a lot of the meta will still be like Eldar and Elites and Shooting Hordes.
A decent amount of the meta will still definitely be teams that are Eldari or Shooting Hordes, yeah.
Yeah, and so teams like that, Novitiates are going to do very well into. And also, like, while they're good, they're not the team that a lot of people are looking at.
No.
I will say, I was annoyed because I started looking at this team at the same time that like the internet started exploding about them because Dakota had his podcast where we all realized that Novitiates were good.
Yeah.
That same day, I swear to you, I texted Dakota like, "Hey, I think the Novitiates are kind of good now," and he's like, "Oh, we just had a podcast come out about that." I was like, "Damn it!" But we're only seeing like 8 of them at LVO.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't think any of them are going to have the experience you do with them, so I don't really...
I've been talking to some people. I think there's going to be some people who know what
There are definitely going to be some people who... So here's the thing. I think that Novitiates could definitely get up there, the top 8, if not better, if you get the right matchups and can avoid players like Adrian or just any good player with the bad matchups.
Bring it on. Yeah, you definitely... in any case, you're going to want to avoid your bad matchups. But I think that Novitiates have a better case for their bad matchups than a lot of teams do right now.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts about, obviously we're going to have your video about Talons of the Emperor coming out in a couple days. But before we start, shilling likes and subscribes and things like that, are there any thoughts that you have about Novitiates or anything that you think that we should have brought up in this video?
Nothing specifically I can think of. I would like to point out that their bad matchups, the most taken team to LVO is going to be Commandos.
That's true.
And there's going to be a few Falgor players, so that might be hard if you get paired into those.
But you know where there's going to be no Falgor?
Our pod?
Pod A.
Yeah,
our pod.
Yeah, that's
so
true. But you still got Falgor.
We got lucky. We still got Commandos.
That's what I meant.
But I'm excited to play them. Yeah. I've been having a great return with them, and I think that they are going to do very well.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not. We want to win the event, but at the same time, it's like that's not the condition for having a good time there.
Yeah, no.
But I think that they could very well make top 8.
Yeah, for sure.
But with that, I think that's all of our thoughts on Novitiates and why I chose to take them.
I think so.
Sweet. So thank you very much for watching to the end of the video. If you liked it, please like the video. And if you want to see more of these videos, they will be coming out for the next few days up until Friday. Friday is going to be a special video while we're all in the throes of combat at LVO. But if you want to see that, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Let me know why I should not have taken this team or why I should have taken this team. I'm still seeking validation from the last video.
Don't give Kellen any validation. He does deserve it.
I deserve the validation. I deserve it all.
He does not deserve the validation.
But we're going to have a couple more videos. We're going to talk to you with your Talons of the Emperor, why you chose to take them.
That's going to be very controversial.
It's going to be very controversial, but it'll be interesting.
Yep.
And then Jimmy Kelly, your father, with Felgor.
Yep.
And then we'll have something special for Friday. So I hope you all are looking forward to that. Stay tuned, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.